Marcus Chen stood at the arrival gate of station terminus, palms sweating as he clutched the digital contract that had cost him 3 years of savings. And when the transport doors hissed open, the woman who stepped out wasn't the smiling bride from the catalog. She was limping, one eye swollen purple, and her luminescent skin that should have glowed like moonlight on water was dim, sickly, mottled with bruises that definitely weren't there in the photos he'd studied every night for 6 months. She was Calithian, one of the rare species that had opened limited marriage contracts with humans after their planet's economic collapse, and her name was Sarah, or at least that's what the papers said. Their eyes met across the crowded platform. She didn't smile. She didn't move toward him. She just stood there, this ethereal being with silver hair that floated slightly as if underwater and eyes too large and too knowing, staring at him like she was measuring whether he was another monster or possibly, maybe something different. Marcus felt his heart hammering because this wasn't right. None of this was right, and every instinct screamed that he should demand a refund, call the agency, report this obvious breach of contract, but instead he heard himself say, "What happened to you?" His voice came out softer than he intended, and something flickered in those enormous violet eyes. Surprise, maybe, or was it fear? She took one careful step forward, winced, and replied in a voice like wind chimes damaged by a storm. "The same thing that happens to all of us." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications he didn't yet understand. Marcus had signed up for the program 8 months ago during the loneliest winter of his life, living in his tiny hab unit on the edge of the Centauri colony, where he worked maintenance on mining equipment, where human women were scarce and connections scarcer, where the agency's promises of companionship and cultural exchange seemed like a lifeline rather than the transaction it clearly was. He'd told himself it could be real, that arranged marriages had worked for centuries in Earth's history, that maybe he and this alien woman could build something genuine. Now looking at Sarah's battered form, he felt sick. "Come on," he said, reaching for her single small bag, noticing how she flinched when his hand moved too quickly. "Let's get you home. You need medical attention." The ride back to his hab unit was silent except for the hum of the transport and Sarah's occasional sharp intake of breath when they hit bumps. Marcus kept stealing glances at her, noting details the agency photos had conveniently omitted or altered. The way her fingers were slightly too long, each tipped with what looked like mother of pearl. The faint pattern of scales along her jawline that caught the light. The way she held herself perfectly still as if moving hurt, as if existing hurt. His mind raced with questions. Who had done this to her? Had it happened during transport before? Was this standard practice and he was just naive enough not to have known? When they arrived at his place, a modest 2-room unit that had seemed adequate when he'd prepared it but now felt shabby and small, she looked around with an expression he couldn't read. "It's not much," he started, but she cut him off. "It's quiet," she said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. "No others. Just you." Marcus nodded slowly. "Just me. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't know what's going on, but I won't." He struggled for words. "You're safe here. Whatever you need. Medical care, time, space, or if you want to leave, I'll help you." Now she looked at him fully, really looked at him, and he saw her eyes begin to glow faintly. That bioluminescence her species was known for. "You would let me leave?" "You paid the contract, 40,000 credits. I know what I cost." Her bluntness startled him. "You're not property," Marcus said firmly. "I don't care what the contract says." She laughed then, a broken sound. "Then you're the first human who feels that way." She moved to the window, looking out at the red dust of the colony stretching to the horizon, and began to speak, her voice steadier now, as if she'd made some decision about him. "Do you know how the Calithian marriage program works?" "Really works? Not the pretty story they tell in the brochures about cultural exchange and mutual benefit?" Marcus shook his head, dread building in his stomach. Sarah continued, her reflection ghostly in the window. "When the corporation collapsed our economy, they offered aid with conditions. One condition was access to Calithian women for their colonial labor forces. Places like this where human men outnumber women 10 to 1. They call it marriage. We call it selling the desperate. My family needed money for my sister's medical treatment. I volunteered." She turned to face him, and in the dim light of his hab, her skin began to pulse with a soft glow, an unconscious response to emotion, he'd later learn. "But the agency, the Corvus Syndicate, they don't just arrange marriages. They break us first. Condition us. Make sure we're compliant. She lifted her shirt slightly, and Marcus saw more bruises, worse ones, and what looked like injection marks. 3 weeks in their preparation facility. They told us it was cultural training, learning human customs, language enhancement. But really, they were teaching us to be afraid, to be obedient, to never question or resist. Marcus felt rage building, hot and righteous. That's illegal. That's trafficking. We need to report this. Sarah's laugh was bitter. To who? The syndicate has contracts with the colonial authority. They provide essential services. Who's going to investigate them? Who's going to care about what happens to alien girls desperate enough to sell themselves? She moved closer to him, and he could smell something like ozone and flowers, her alien scent. But they made a mistake with me. My people have an ability humans don't know about because we've hidden it for generations. We can share memories through touch, pass information directly from mind to mind. While they were breaking us, we were recording everything. All 23 of us in that facility, every face, every crime, every detail. And they released me anyway because I played broken well enough. Marcus's mind reeled. This was so much bigger than he'd imagined. You're gathering evidence, he said slowly. Building a case, Sarah nodded. Me and others like me, placed in colonies across the sector. We document. We share what we learn through the network of Calithian women, and when we have enough, we expose everything. She fixed him with an intense stare. But I need time, safety, and a convincing cover as a compliant contract bride. Can you give me that? Every sensible part of Marcus's brain screamed at him to refuse. To extract himself from the situation that could cost him everything. His job, his freedom, possibly his life if the syndicate was as powerful as she suggested. But he looked at this fierce, damaged woman who'd survived torture to become a spy, who was fighting back against a system designed to crush her. And he knew there was only one answer he could live with. Yes, he said simply. What do you need me to do? Something shifted in Sarah's expression. A softening, a crack in her armor. Pretend we're a normal couple. Go to work, live your life, let me heal and do my work. Don't ask too many questions. And if anyone from the syndicate checks, tell them I'm everything you hoped for. She paused, vulnerability creeping into her voice. Can you do that? Can you lie for me? Marcus stepped closer, slowly, telegraphing his movement so she wouldn't startle. I'm not much of a liar, but for this, for you, I'll learn. The words surprised him with their intensity, but he meant them. There was something about Sarah, beyond her beauty, beyond the righteous cause, a core of strength wrapped in trauma that called to something in him, something that had been dormant in his quiet, lonely life. The first week was awkward, careful, like learning a dance where neither partner knew the steps. Marcus went to work each day, returning to find Sarah at his console, typing furiously in Calithian script, or meditating in that eerie way her people did, floating an inch above the floor with her eyes glowing like stars. She moved through his space like a ghost, rarely eating, speaking only when necessary, and he gave her room, remembering what she'd said about needing safety and quiet. But he also noticed things, how she never turned her back to the door, how she flinched at sudden sounds, how she'd touch objects in his hab as if memorizing them, and he wondered what other horrors she'd endured that she hadn't spoken about. On the 8th day, a syndicate agent came to check on them. A sharp-eyed woman named Torres who showed up unannounced and asked invasive questions. How's your bride working out, Mr. Chen? Everything satisfactory? Any complaints? Marcus forced a smile, aware of Sarah standing rigid behind him, playing the dutiful wife in a dress that covered her fading bruises. She's perfect, he said, and reached back to take Sarah's hand. Her skin was cool, smoother than human skin, and he felt a strange tingle at the contact. I'm very happy with the arrangement. Torres's eyes narrowed. Good. Because contract violations are expensive and we'd hate to have to repossess her due to complaints. You understand? The threat was barely veiled. After Torres left, Sarah collapsed into a chair, trembling. That woman was at the facility, she whispered. She was one of the ones who... Her voice broke. Without thinking, Marcus knelt beside her, and for the first time, she let him touch her, his hand on her shoulder, grounding her. She can't hurt you here, he said. I won't let her. Sarah looked at him with those impossibly large eyes. You can't promise that. But she didn't pull away from his touch. Something changed between them after that day. Sarah began to talk more, sharing pieces of herself, her love of music, how Calithian songs were performed in light patterns as much as sound, how she missed her sister Lyra, who was only 12 and undergoing treatments that might save her life, thanks to Sarah's sacrifice. Marcus shared, too, his own loneliness, the accident that had killed his brother and driven him to the colonies to escape memories, his simple dreams of connection and purpose. They developed routines, small intimacies that weren't romantic but felt significant. Sarah making tea in the mornings using herbs from the colony market that smelled like rainstorms. Marcus cooking dinners that accommodated her different biology. Evenings where they'd sit in comfortable silence while she worked and he read. And slowly, carefully, Sarah taught him about her mission. She showed him the network. Dozens of Calithian women across multiple colonies all gathering intelligence on the syndicate's operations. They discovered financial crimes, human trafficking beyond just the marriage contracts, connections to organized crime syndicates, and politicians on multiple worlds. "We're almost ready," Sarah told him one night, her skin glowing with excitement and fear. "Another month, maybe 2, and we'll have enough to take to the inter-system court, bypass the corrupt colonial authorities entirely. We can bring the whole thing down." Marcus felt pride surge through him, but also dread. "They'll know it was you, all of you. The syndicate won't just let this happen." Sarah met his eyes. "I know. That's why when we release the information, those of us who can will disappear. New identities, new worlds. There are sympathetic groups who'll help." His heart sank. "You'll have to leave." She nodded, and was it his imagination or did she look sad? "That was always the plan. This isn't real, Marcus. We aren't real." "I'm sorry if you—" "Don't," he said more sharply than intended. "Don't apologize for saving yourself and others. And don't tell me what I feel isn't real." The tension between them grew after that conversation, something unspoken and electric. Marcus caught Sarah watching him sometimes with an expression he couldn't quite name, and he became hyper-aware of her presence, the sound of her breathing, the way her hair floated when she was emotional, how her laugh, rare but genuine when it came, sounded like crystal bells. He was falling for her, he realized. Had been falling since the moment she'd stepped off that transport broken and defiant. He was falling for an alien woman who would soon disappear from his life, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Then everything went wrong. Marcus came home on a Tuesday to find his hab trashed, furniture overturned, Sarah's carefully hidden equipment smashed. And Sarah was being held by 2 large men he recognized as syndicate enforcers, her face bloodied again, fresh bruises blooming on her arms. A third man, well-dressed and cold-eyed, sat in Marcus's chair like a throne. "Mr. Chen," the man said pleasantly, "I'm Director Kane, Regional Head of Corvus Syndicate Operations. We have a problem. Your bride has been engaging in activities that violate her contract terms. Corporate espionage, data theft, conspiracy to defame. Very serious charges." Marcus's mind raced, calculating odds, options, outcomes. He was a maintenance tech, not a fighter. But he was also a man who'd lost everyone he loved and refused to lose anyone else. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said carefully. "Sarah's been here every day being a wife. Maybe your intel is wrong." Kane smiled, and it was Predator's expression. "Don't insult my intelligence. We've been monitoring her network for weeks. We know everything. The only question is whether you're a victim of her deception or a co-conspirator. Tell me now, and maybe you survive this." Marcus looked at Sarah. Her lip was split, her eyes swelling shut again, but her gaze was fierce, and she gave the tiniest shake of her head. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." He'd never been a brave man. He'd spent years hiding from pain, from connection, from risk. But looking at her, this warrior woman who'd endured hell to fight for justice, he found courage he didn't know he possessed. "She's my wife," Marcus said clearly. "Whatever she did, we did together. You want to take her, you take me too." Kane's smile vanished. "That can be arranged. Kill them both. Make it look like a domestic incident." The enforcers moved, and Marcus threw himself forward, knowing it was futile but unable to do nothing. And then Sarah screamed, not in pain but in fury, and light exploded from her body. It wasn't the gentle glow he'd seen before. This was blinding, searing, a supernova contained in flesh. The enforcers stumbled back, covering their eyes, and Sarah tore free from their grip with strength that shouldn't have been possible for her slender frame. "Marcus, run," she shouted. But he was already moving, not away but toward her, grabbing her hand. Together they bolted for the door, alarms blaring, shouts behind them. They ran through the colony corridors, Sarah's light pulsing like a beacon, drawing attention they couldn't afford. "This way?" Marcus gasped, pulling her toward the maintenance tunnels he knew intimately from 3 years of work. They plunged into darkness, and Sarah's glow became their guide. Her hand tight in his as they navigated the maze of pipes and conduits. Behind them, he heard pursuit, heavy boots, angry voices. They were trapped, he realized. The tunnels all led back to monitored areas eventually. "Sarah," he panted, "your network. Can you contact them? Get help?" She shook her head, luminescent tears streaming down her face. "Our communication hub was in the hab. They destroyed it." "Marcus, I'm sorry, I never meant to." "Stop," he said fiercely, pulling her into an alcove, the sounds of their hunters growing closer. They were pressed together in the dark, her alien warmth against him, both of their hearts hammering. "Listen to me. Whatever happens, I don't regret this. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Arrangement or not, mission or not. You made me feel alive again." Sarah stared at him, her glow intensifying with emotion. "You strange, foolish human," she whispered. "I wasn't supposed to care about you. This was supposed to be strategy, survival. But somewhere between your kindness and your terrible cooking and the way you never demanded anything from me, She stopped, struggling with the words. "In my language we have a phrase, Kareshithal. It means the one who sees you truly. Marcus, you see me. Not a contract, not a victim, not a tool. Me." Then she kissed him, and it was electric and desperate and tasted like hope and goodbye. When they broke apart, he could hear the enforcers were nearly on top of them. "I have an idea," Sarah said suddenly. "But you have to trust me." Before he could respond, she pressed both hands to his face, and suddenly his mind exploded with light and sensation and memory. Her memories cascading through him like a waterfall. He saw everything, the facility where they'd broken her, the faces of the syndicate's leaders, the evidence she'd compiled, the network of women across the stars all fighting the same fight, and more. He saw how she felt about him. The surprise of finding genuine connection, the agony of knowing she'd have to leave, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, they could have more than this. The download lasted seconds but felt like hours, and when she pulled away, he staggered. "What did you—" "Insurance," Sarah said. "If they take me, you still have everything. Find a woman named Dr. Elise Chen at the medical facility. She's sympathetic, she'll know what to do with the information. Promise me you'll finish this." Marcus grabbed her shoulders. "We'll finish it together. I'm not losing you." But even as he spoke, lights flooded the alcove and Kane's voice rang out cold and final. "Touching. Enforcers, secure them." What happened next came in fragments. Sarah's scream of defiance, her light flaring so bright it burned. Marcus fighting with everything he had despite never being a fighter, the sharp pain of a stunner blast, and then darkness. Marcus woke in a detention cell, head pounding, alone. Panic seized him immediately. "Sarah!" he shouted, throwing himself at the force field that sealed the cell. "Where is she?" A guard's voice crackled through a speaker. "The alien's been transferred to syndicate custody for contract violation and corporate espionage. You're being charged as an accessory. Enjoy your stay." "No, no, no, no." Marcus slammed his fists against the field until they bled, shouting until his voice gave out, but no one came. They'd taken her back to the people who'd tortured her, and this time they wouldn't make the mistake of letting her survive. Despair threatened to swallow him whole until he remembered the memories she'd shared, the name she'd given him. Dr. Elise Chen. His cousin, actually, whom he'd lost touch with years ago but who worked at the colony medical facility. If he could just get out of this cell, if he could reach her. He forced himself to think tactically. What would Sarah do? She'd observe, plan, wait for opportunity. So he waited, cataloging everything. Guard rotations, security protocols, the slight flicker in the force field that suggested aging equipment. 12 hours passed before opportunity came in the form of shift change and a distracted guard. Marcus, who'd spent 3 years maintaining equipment including detention systems, knew exactly where the manual override panel was hidden. It took him 4 minutes to short out the field using a metal food tray. And then he was running again, stealing a worker's uniform, blending into the colony's morning shift, making his way to the medical facility with his heart in his throat. Dr. Elise Chen was older than he remembered, graying and tired-eyed, but she recognized him immediately. "Marcus, what are you—" He grabbed her arm, pulling her into an empty exam room and whispered urgently, Do you know anything about the Calithian marriage program? About Corvus Syndicate? Her expression shifted, hardened. What do you know about it? She asked carefully. Everything, Marcus said. I have proof. Evidence of trafficking, torture, corruption. But they took her, Elise. They took Sarah, and she's going to die if we don't do something right now. His cousin studied him for a long moment, then moved to the door, locked it, and turned back with fire in her eyes. I've been trying to expose the syndicate for 2 years. We have a network, sympathetic colonists, journalists, lawyers, but we've never had evidence strong enough to stick. If you really have proof, I have everything, Marcus said, tapping his temple. Calithian memory transfer, documents, testimonies, faces, dates, everything we need. But first I need you to help me get Sarah back. Elise smiled grimly. Then we're going to need more people. What followed was a blur of frantic planning, whispered conversations, and impossible coordination. It turned out Marcus wasn't alone. There were dozens of people in the colony who'd suspected or known about the syndicate's crimes, who'd been waiting for a chance to act. Elise's network included security personnel disgusted by corruption, off-world journalists looking for the story that would make their careers, and even 3 other Calithian women in contract marriages who'd been part of Sarah's intelligence network. They had 8 hours before Marcus's escape would trigger a colony-wide lockdown, 8 hours to break into the syndicate's regional headquarters, extract Sarah and whoever else they were holding, and transmit the evidence to the intersystem court before the whole operation was shut down. It was insane. It was impossible. Let's do it, Marcus said. The assault on syndicate headquarters wasn't the dramatic battle he'd imagined from action vids. It was careful, precise, coordinated. Security personnel who were part of the network failed to notice breaches. Journalists positioned themselves to record everything, and Marcus led a small team through maintenance tunnels, his expertise finally crucial, that brought them up underneath the detention level. They found Sarah in an interrogation room, and Marcus's vision went red. She was strapped to a chair, bruises upon bruises, her glow nearly extinguished, and Torres stood over her with a neural prod. But when the door burst open and Sarah saw Marcus, her eyes blazed back to life. "You're supposed to be smart and run," she rasped, but she was smiling, actually smiling. "Yeah, well, you said I was foolish," Marcus replied, firing the stunner he'd appropriated at Torres, who dropped like a puppet with cut strings. He rushed to free Sarah, hands shaking as he undid the restraints. "Are you okay? Can you walk?" "I can fight," Sarah said, and proved it by standing despite obvious pain and joining the others as they swept through the facility. Freeing 6 other Calithian women and gathering physical evidence to supplement the memories Sarah had shared with him, alarms screamed. Syndicate enforcers poured in. The journalists broadcast everything live, their feeds going out to networks across multiple systems before the syndicate could shut them down, and Marcus stayed at Sarah's side, this woman who glowed like starlight even when broken, defending her as she uploaded the final evidence dump to the intersystem court's secure servers. When the Colonial Authority forces finally arrived, the legitimate ones, not those on syndicate payroll, they found a scene of chaos, syndicate personnel in restraints, freed victims, and enough documented crimes to trigger the biggest interplanetary scandal in a decade. Director Kane tried to run. Sarah dropped him with a blast of light that left him blind and babbling. It was over. Not the war, not yet. The syndicate had operations across a dozen worlds, and the legal battles would take years. But this battle, this moment, they'd won. Marcus found Sarah on the roof of the medical facility 3 days later, as the first wave of intersystem investigators descended on the colony. She was staring at the stars, her skin glowing softly in the darkness, almost back to full health. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah turned, and her smile was sad and warm simultaneously. "I have to testify. And my sister. The publicity, the settlements the syndicate will have to pay, it means Lyra gets the treatment she needs. I have to see her." Marcus nodded, throat tight. "I understand." "But," Sarah said, stepping closer, taking his hands in her 2 long, 2 smooth ones, "I'm not disappearing. No new identity, no running. I'm Sarah, and you're Marcus, and what we have is real, Kareshithal. The one who sees me truly." Her eyes glowed brighter. "If you want, when the trials are done, when things settle, there's a place on Calith for humans who want to immigrate. They need good maintenance techs there, too." Hope bloomed in Marcus's chest, fragile and fierce. You're asking me to follow you across the galaxy? I'm asking if you want to turn an arrangement into something real, Sarah said softly. No contracts, no obligation. Just choice. Just us. Marcus thought about his empty life before her, the loneliness, the hiding. He thought about the woman she was, fierce and vulnerable, alien and utterly relatable, a warrior with a laugh like crystal bells. He thought about how she'd trusted him with her mission, her memories, her heart. I spent 3 years of savings on a contract that was supposed to buy me companionship, he said, pulling her closer. Best investment I ever made. And yes, Sarah, wherever you go, I want to be there. No arrangement. Just choice. Just us. When she kissed him this time, it wasn't desperate or afraid. It was promise and future and hope. Her skin glowed so brightly they were surrounded by light, and Marcus felt like he was holding a star. Around them, the colony buzzed with change and consequence. The first tremors of a war against exploitation that would reshape human-alien relations across known space. But in that moment, on that roof, there were just 2 people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to be each other's light. Besides, Marcus added, pulling back to grin at her, I need someone to teach me to cook Calithian food. My terrible cooking won't survive on your world. Sarah laughed, that beautiful crystalline sound, and Marcus knew he'd follow that laugh to the edge of the universe and beyond. 6 months later, as Marcus testified before the Inter-System Court about everything he'd witnessed and everything Sarah had shown him, he wore a bracelet of woven light fiber that she'd made him, traditional Calithian courtship jewelry. The Syndicate's operations were being dismantled across multiple worlds. Dozens of rescued women were returning home or building new lives of their choosing, and the humans and Calithians were negotiating new agreements built on respect rather than exploitation. And when the trial finally ended, when Sarah stepped out of the courthouse with her sister, Lyra, recovered and healthy in 12 years of bright-eyed curiosity, she found Marcus waiting with 2 tickets to Calith and a question he'd been practicing in her language. He wasn't perfect at it yet, his human tongue stumbling over the musical syllables, but he managed to say, Karishthal, will you show me your world? Sarah's glow could have lit the entire plaza, and her answer needed no translation. Sometimes, Marcus reflected as they boarded the ship that would take them to a new life. The best things in life come from the most unexpected places. He'd paid for an arrangement and found a partner. He'd sought companionship and found purpose. He'd opened his door to a bruised alien woman seeking refuge, and she'd opened the universe for him. The war against the Syndicate would continue for years, but they'd struck a blow that mattered, saved lives that counted, and found something worth fighting for in each other. As the ship lifted off and Calith grew closer, its blue-green surface beautiful and strange and home because she was there, Marcus took Sarah's hand and felt the gentle tingle of her touch. The warmth of connection that transcended species or contracts or arrangements. She looked at him, this woman who glowed like moonlight, and whispered, Thank you for seeing me. Always, Marcus replied. Always.